So today we are discussing unsupervised learning. So far we have discussed machine learning as a whole. Then it involves two parts: supervised learning and unsupervised learning. So in supervised learning we saw classification and regression, where we have those labels like it is yes or no, or what is the value for a particular instance, for a particular example. But how unsupervised learning differs from supervised learning, we will see that. Okay. So in unsupervised learning, there are no target labels. That is, we don't know the class or the value of the target class of what particular data point. So that implies that data is unlabeled. So in supervised learning we have labeled data set, whereas in unsupervised we have unlabeled data set. So here models are trained using unlabeled data set and are allowed to act on that data without any supervision. So by supervision here we imply that as we in a way supervise the model in machine learning, in classification and regression, we try to supervise the model using those target labels, that it will try to understand, okay, this particular instance belongs with these particular features, belong to this particular class, right, or represents this particular value. So in that sense we are supervising it. But in unsupervised learning we don't have those target labels, right? So there we talk about unsupervised learning. So mostly what we see in unsupervised learning is clustering only. I mean, there are other things such as association rule as well, which becomes a part of clustering. I mean, unsupervised learning, that uh, but as of now we are looking into clustering. So clustering is a very important concept in machine learning, data science as a whole, and also in as a part of unsupervised learning. So let's first understand what we mean by clustering. So clustering, as the name suggests, we are trying to find clusters in a data set. So as we can see in this image that earlier these data points we had, and we want to divide those data points, which basically are petal length and petal width are the features for those data points. We are trying to divide that into some clusters, and by cluster we here mean that data points in a particular cluster will have same data points in a particular cluster will have similar properties, and data point in a different cluster will have different properties. So that is what we mean by a cluster. So clustering, yeah, so that is what clustering basically implies. We are trying to find data points which have similar properties and clubbing them together, identifying that, okay, this particular data point belongs to this particular set of data points, right? So that is what we mean by clustering. So it is a technique for finding groups of objects such that objects in a group will be similar to one another and different from the objects in another group, right? So that is clustering, and because of uh, its wide applications, it is widely being used everywhere. We can see it in marketing, market structure analysis, that it helps marketers and business analysts to discover distinct groups in their customer bases, and then use this knowledge to develop targeted marketing programs, right? It will, suppose we have a data set of let's say a particular city, right? So in a particular city we have a data set of people buying mobile phones, right? So a mobile phone company has this data set of people buying them. So it involves their age, it involves their uh, gender, it involves their, I mean, all of basic details is there, and using those features we are trying to group them. So as to the company might in future decide that, okay, so this particular group of people tend to choose our product by in this particular domain. So that way they design their strategies, right? So there it has wide application, and then other areas as well, because land use, insurance, city planning. There you can identify these groups and then use your analytical skills to make such strategies. So now comes the clustering approaches. So how do we do clustering, right? So clustering algorithm approaches can be basically divided into three parts. So the first one is partition based. There comes k-means, k-midwives. Then hierarchical. So hierarchical can be further subdivided into agglomerative and divisive. And then the third one is density based, which involves DB scan. So partitioning algorithms, by that we mean that we construct various partitions in the data set and then we evaluate them, those groups, by some criterion, right? So that is a vast, wide overview, eagle eye view of partition algorithm. Then hierarchy algorithms, we create a hierarchical decomposition of the set of data. We will see that in detail, but that is just an introductory line towards that particular algorithm. Then density based algorithm, we have there we are dividing those clusters or identifying those clusters on the basis of their density, right? So the first one is k-means algorithm, and it is the most used clustering algorithm you will ever see, right? Till now it is the most used clustering algorithm because in various domains, in various problems, be it small, be it large, k-means algorithm proves its metal, and it proves quite useful in almost every clustering problem. So that is widely used and is very important from interview perspective as well. So it is quite simple also. So k-means algorithm here, suppose you are trying to make k clusters, right? You are trying to find k groups in a particular data set. So you first specify the number k. Suppose you are trying to divide it into three clusters. So the number k value will be 3. Then you randomly initialize k centroids. So k centroids, here we are considering centroid as a mean, right? So first k, you are just randomly putting 3 data points as 3 centroids in the whole data set. Then on the basis of some similarity measure, here we usually use Euclidean distance. So you calculate Euclidean distance of each data point from those 3 points, right? And those data points are then assigned to that particular group, that particular cluster, which has lesser distance, right? So suppose the data point is to be, so we have these three, we have decided that okay, we are going to find 3 groups. So k equals 3. Now we have assigned randomly 3 data points, and those 3 initial seeds, then we calculate for each data point, we calculate the distance with those 3 data points, right? And then for suppose we have took one data point and we have calculated distance from those 3 centroids, it comes smaller for the second one. So this data point will be assigned to second one. Similarly, we will do for all the data points, and those will be assigned to different clusters. So this is for one iteration, right? Then in the next iteration also we will do the same. Now in the next iteration we will calculate the mean of those clusters, right? And that will be the next centroid. And we will again do the same. We will again do the same until the centroid positions do not change, or the centroids change very less, right? We have defined some threshold, and then accordingly we do that. So that is the k-means algorithm, right? So this is a demonstration. So here we can see that this is the data set, right? And we have chosen these 3 data points, distinct data points, and these are randomly generated. Okay. So then once these data points are chosen, then for each data point we calculate the distance, right? And those data points which have similar distance, which are closer to, suppose this particular distance here, instance here is closer to this red one. So it will be assigned to this red cluster, whereas this one is closer to this green one. Whole here to here, we find that okay, these points are closer to the green one, so those will be assigned like this. Similarly, blue ones. So this way we have found out that okay, these come in the red cluster, these come in the green, these come in the blue. But this is for the first iteration. Then again we are taking the mean of these data points, right? So then we will get new centroids. So then new centroids will be somewhere in between, right? So then new centroids we will get, and then we will again calculate this distance, this similarity measure. So again those will be reshuffled. So it will go on until the centroids do not change, right? Until convergence have been reached. So this is the this is the so this here is called the Voronoi diagram. So this here represents that okay, this particular is one cluster, this is another, and this is the this is called the boundary, decision boundary. So the strength and weaknesses of K-means algorithm. So strengths are that it is simple. Hello. I heard some.
So please start the today recording, sir.
Haven't I started today's recording? I think I have. It's being recorded. Hello? Yeah, it's fine. So strengths and weaknesses. So strengths are that it is simple and efficient, and weaknesses that it is only applicable if mean is defined, right? If you have numerical data points, or if taking the mean makes sense there, then only you can apply it. Also, K needs to be specified, right? Before making those clusters, you need to have an idea that okay, this particular data set might include 3 or 4 groups, right? Then you can put K equals 3 or K equals 4, right? So that needs to be specified. Sensitive to outliers. So by this I mean that suppose you have this outlier here, right? So because it is a mean based approach, right? Centroid based approach. So once this outlier is taken into consideration, then its mean would lie somewhere here, right? So this would be the shape of the cluster. Whereas what we want as a cluster is these two clusters we want, right? Ideal cluster should be these two. That is, the centroid should be somewhere here. But because of this outlier, the centroid gets shifted towards the outlier, right? So that can be dealt with removing outliers or using some sampling technique. Then only spherical clusters, or those which have some hypersphere sort of shape, are usually found by this algorithm. So not suitable for not hypersphere clusters, right? So here we can see that this is some sort of C or J shaped moon shape, you can say, cluster. So these two should be the ideal clusters, right? But here we can see that it has identified these two as the clusters. One centroid is above, one is down, and these are somewhat spherical, right? So this is not suitable for not hypersphere clusters, non-hypersphere clusters. Then sensitive to initial seeds, right? Because here we are setting seeds initially, so that way it becomes very sensitive. Suppose here seeds are chosen in between, so earlier seeds are chosen as these 2 points here, right? So on the basis of it has identified these two clusters. And in another case, if some other random seed is chosen, then it will be like this, which is ideal. So it totally depends upon what seed is chosen, and that is randomly selected, right? So one way to do it is we can randomly select. There are other approaches as well to avoid this. We will see that further to deal with initial seeds. So one such approach is like we will choose the another data point such that it is at maximum distance from other data points, somewhat like that. Then not suitable for discovering clusters. Yeah, that we have dealt with. Okay, so that is K-means algorithm. If you have any doubt, let's discuss. Otherwise, we can move with the coding part of K-means. So in clustering, K-means basically, so we do that by sklearn, right? So here we are generating some random blobs of data set, right? With these two dimensions, x1 and x2, we are creating these data points, and we can see that we have made these blobs, right? So then we will try to cluster these data points. So we have imported this make blobs function to create these blobs of data points, and right, and then we are plotting them. So we are now trying to cluster these data points. So we can see that there are like 5 clusters. Yeah. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Then we are trying to fit and predict. So from sklearn.cluster we import k-means. Then here as we can see that okay, there are 5 clusters. So we have put k equals 5, and then we are trying to predict it, right? So each instance was assigned to one of the 5 clusters. Each data point here is being assigned to one of the five clusters. So this is the y predicted. So y predicted, what will it have for each data point? Each of those data points, it will for each of those data points, it will try to predict a class, right? A cluster from 1 to 5, right? So that will be the y predicted, and it is also k-means dot labels. So here by label we mean that the index of the cluster that an instance get assigned to. So these are the cluster centers, right? Those centroids, final centroids we have found out. So this is for the new instance also you can predict, right? For if there is some new instance and you have created this model, then on that particular new instance you can predict the you can predict which particular instance that particular which particular cluster that particular instance belongs to. So we have seen what k-means algorithm does. It initializes k centroids randomly and repeats until convergence, assigns each instance to the closest centroid, and then updates centroids by the mean of the instances that are assigned to them, right? So yeah, if you multiple times run k-means, then as I told that due to the initialization of seeds, it tend to give different outputs. So you can yeah, for an instance you can set seed, but as you want to experiment and look into how it is performing, so to evaluate the model we have inertia, right? So inertia is basically this distance between each instance and its centroid, right? So so it is basically an intra-cluster distance. So inertia is the sum of squared distance between each training instance and its closest centroid. So that way we calculate inertia, and basically we are trying to maximize this inertia, right? So yeah, then there are multiple. So one approach to solve the variability issue is to run it multiple times with different random initializations, and then select the solution that minimizes the inertia. So we want to minimize the intra-cluster distance, right? Inside the cluster there should be as less distance as possible, right? As less dissimilarity as possible. So that's what we do. So this is the inertia. So yeah, so there is this parameter n init. So n init, if you set to 10, then it will try to run this algorithm 10 times, and it will choose the algorithm which minimizes the inertia. It chooses that, selects that solution, selects that model, right? Here we can see from this diagram that these are the clusters we have found. These are the 5 clusters we have found. So as we have said that due to this random initialization thing, the algorithm might not perform well. So to deal with that, one such approach is after taking one centroid which is chosen randomly at random, then take a new center choosing an instance xi with some probability, right? This is the algorithm, this is the function for that probability, and such that the distance, so this is the distance, dx is the distance, and this is the probability function by which we try to choose the another data point, and rest of it is similar as k-means. So that is just another way to try to choose the centroid, right? So k-means plus plus is one such algorithm. Then we have, for finding the optimal number of clusters, because here we could see from visualizing the data set that okay, because there were 2 dimensions only, so we could visualize it. We can visualize for n dimensions also using approaches like TSE. You can write it down, TSNE. So you can visualize it, but many times we can't actually identify that how many clusters are there. So K, to identify what should be the K, ideal K, optimal K for the clustering algorithm, we need to have some approach, some way. So for that, one such approach is elbow method, right? Elbow curve. So we will see that. So here we can see that this is not that much nice. These clusters are for k equals 3, right? For k equals 3, we can see that these are the 3 centroids, these cross here. These are the 3 centroids, and it has badly clustered these data points. Here for k equals 8 also it is badly clustered. So inertia is also quite large. So basically, so here we can see that these clusters are not nice because their k value is not optimal. So to identify the k optimal k value, we try to plot for different k values. We can see that, right? K equals 1, k equals 2, k equals 3. So as the k increases, the inertia decreases, right? Because the more clusters there are, the closer each instance will be to its closest centroid, right? So therefore, the lower the inertia will be. So we will plot this curve and we will identify from where it takes the turn. It shows an elbow here, right? So wherever we get this elbow, we say that okay, this is the this might be the perfect, this might be the optimal number of clusters, optimal k. So as you can see, there is an elbow at k equals 4, which means that less clusters than that would be bad and more clusters would not help much. So k equals 4 is pretty good choice. However, we know that k equals 5 also we can try. So that is just upon experimentation. So, right. So that is about finding the optimal number of clusters. So limits of k means again that we can see these are not spherical clusters, so these won't be not well defined clusters. These won't be much well defined clusters. So to deal with that, we have other approaches also. We will see that now. So I hope the coding part is clear for k-means. So hierarchical clustering we do by, so we are done with partitioning based clustering now. We have seen k-means. Now hierarchical clustering comes into play. So hierarchical clustering basically implies approach via partitioning dataset sequentially. So these are some technical terms which will make confused. Let's look at this diagram here and then you will get exactly what I mean by hierarchical. So here we are trying to partition the data set in a hierarchical manner, right? So suppose there are 5 data points you have in your data set, A, B, C, D, E. So early at first step, what we do, we choose initialize. So this is the agglomerative approach. We are going by agglomerative, we mean bottom up. We are going bottom up. We are taking each data point and then trying to build a cluster. So here each object is a cluster, right? So we have taken each data point as a cluster here. Then we are trying to merge 2 clusters which are most similar to each other, right? So here we can see that A and B were most similar, so we have merged them in the second step. Similarly, D and E were most closer, we have found, and we have merged them in the step 2. In the third step, we have merged C and D, E. In the fourth step, we have merged A, B, C, D, E. So here we don't need to define the number of clusters, as you can see. We can just cut this at a particular step and we can get those number of clusters, right? So if we cut at step 0, you will get 5 clusters. If you cut at step 1, you will get 3 clusters. If you cut at step 2, you will get 3 clusters. If you get at step 3, you will get, so this is how it works, the agglomerative approach, right? Divisive, is also one such hierarchical clustering approach in which we go by top-down approach, right? So here we take whole of the data set as a cluster, and then we try to break it down such that select a cluster and split it into two subclusters, right? Using some similarity metric. So here we have ABCD, we have broken it down into two different clusters. Then we have broken it down into further two different clusters, and then further we have broken it down. So depending upon where we break it, where we try to stop it, we will get the number of clusters. So this is the dendrogram, which basically, dendrogram basically is a representation, right? So this is one such representation that shows how clusters are merged or split hierarchically. So each node on the tree is a cluster, each leaf node is a singleton cluster, right? So each node is a cluster and each leaf is a single cluster. So it is obtained by cutting the dendrogram at desired level, then each connected component forms a cluster. So if you cut at this point, then here you can see like how many points you have, connected points you have. So here 1 and 2 the 2 you will get. Then if you cut, so depending upon where you cut, you will get those many clusters, right? So here you can get these 3 clusters. So this is about hierarchical clustering. So hierarchical clustering we can do by this. For sklearn we have agglomerative clustering. In R, in other there might be other libraries as well, but you need to look into that. Also you can make your own functions for clustering, but that depends upon your approach totally. So agglomerative clustering you can do by using sklearn itself, right? So yeah, just using some few codes you can do that. So it has, as I've told, that it depends upon what similarity measure you use. So there are these similarity measures: complete linkage, which basically implies that you will try to find the distance such that of the points which are at maximum distance. Then average linkage means you will try to calculate the distance for each pair of data point in the two clusters, and then you will try to calculate their average, and then you will measure the distances, right? Then single linkage means those data points which are at minimum distance. So that is what we do in single linkage. So by agglomerative clustering we mean that. So this is how you implement agglomerative clustering. Then we have density based scan, right? Density based clustering. So in density based, I hope agglomerative clustering is clear to all. Agglomerative and divisive clustering. So we can now proceed with density based clustering. If you have any doubts, you are free to discuss. Free to ask. So density based we are dealing with now. So as we have seen that this k-means algorithms are not suitable for such non-spherical clusters, findings of non-spherical clusters. So for that we have density based approach, right? So here we are clustering on the basis of local connectivity, like how a particular data point is connected to another data point. So on the basis of local connectivity and density functions, right? So basic idea is that clusters, we are here defining the clusters as dense regions in the data space separated by regions of lower object density, right? So that's quite an intuitive idea. Then a cluster is defined as a maximal set of density connected points. So each cluster has a considerable higher density of points than outside of clusters, right? So here we can see that for this particular data set, those which are quite dense to each other are considered as one cluster, right? So if you find that, okay, there the density breaks, then you will say, okay, this one is the another cluster, right? So the major feature for this is that it discovers clusters for arbitrary shaped it handles noise quite well, because if there are outliers, it handles that. Then also one scan with, there we were doing multiple iterations of the data set. So here we are just at one scan we can get the density and get those. So by terminology here we imply like what parameters are there, because these parameters we need to set in the model, in the algorithm while we are doing. So there are two global parameters. One is EPS, epsilon, also known as. So what basically it means is maximum radius of the neighborhood. So here we can see that. So we define this epsilon as the maximum radius of the neighborhood. So for a particular point, all the points which lie in this neighborhood are known as core point, right? So this is, suppose this is a point. So all the point, so basically this is the this is a central point, and suppose we want to know what. So if it has an epsilon 1, then it implies that its neighborhood lies in this particular region, right? Then min points is the minimum number of points in an epsilon neighborhood of that point, right? So in that epsilon neighborhood, what are the number of points we can see, right? So here in this epsilon neighborhood, we can see that there are two data points. For this particular instance, we can see there are in this epsilon neighborhood two data points. For this particular, we can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 data points, right? So these are the number of points. So density, by density we imply number of points within a specified radius, right? So within a specified epsilon, how many number of data points are there, that we define the density. So a point is a core point if it has more than a specified number of points, right? So suppose minimum points we have defined as 4, epsilon we have defined as 1. So the core point would imply, which one would be the core point? Here, for if we check for this data point, then here there are 2 points in the density is 2, right? So the density is 2, so that is there are 2 data points in its neighborhood. So this won't be considered as a core point, right? Similarly for this one, we see that there are 2 data points, so this won't be considered as a core point. This data point can be considered as a core point because it has more than minimum number of points, that is more than 4 points, right? So this one is the core point here. So these are the points that are at the interior of the cluster, right? So then a border point we define as a point which has fewer than minimum points but is in the neighborhood of core point. So this border point, what we define as border point is a point which is at the inside this vicinity, inside this radius, right? But has lesser number of but has lesser density than the minimum number of points. So for this particular point, if we see, it is near the core, it is inside the density of the core point, it is inside the radius of the core point, but its own density is 2, which is less than 4, so it will be considered as a border point, right? So if it were beyond this vicinity, then it would be not a border point, it would be a noise point. So a noise point, that is why it is called at border. It is at border, right? It is a border point. So a noise point is any point that is not a core point or a border point. So if point is not a core point and also not a border point, then it is considered as a noise point. That is, it does not, this point does not lie in the vicinity, in the radius of the core point, and also it do not have minimum number of points around it. So then that is the noise point. So this is the terminology we see in the DBSCAN algorithm. We will now look at it. So here we can see that epsilon parameter is 2 centimeter and the minimum number of points we are looking for is 3. So suppose for each O belonging to the data set, this is the algorithm. So what we do is, if O is not yet classified, so if it is not yet put into some cluster, then what we do, if O is a core object, so we here try to find out what object is it. So we have suppose selected this object and we are now trying to find its vicinity. So this is the radius, in the 2 centimeter radius we see these points lie. So this is the three points lie in it. So this we can consider as a core point, right? So it is a core point. So collect all objects density reachable from O. So by density reachable we mean that that those points. I think I have this density reachable definition. I think that's so by density reachable, we mean that any point Q is directly density reachable from object P if P is a core object and Q is in P's epsilon neighborhood, right? So if P is a core object and Q is in its epsilon neighborhood, then we say that it is density reachable, right? So So all those objects which are density reachable from this point are collected in that cluster, right? Then then we will reach further. We will reach further and collect, keep on collecting those data points which are density reachable. Okay, and then assign them to a new cluster. So we will keep on doing that, keep on doing that, keep on doing that until we find that it is not a core object, right? So if it is not a core object, then we assign that particular point as a noise. So this particular point you see here is considered as a noise if because there is no point in its vicinity, in its radius, right? So uh, similarly we do for it, right? So there are three clusters we have found using this algorithm, using DBScan. So advantages are that these clusters can have arbitrary shape and size. Number of clusters is determined automatically. You don't need to identify K or define where you need to stop the algorithm. Also can separate clusters from surrounding noise. So outliers are not problem here. Then can be supported by a spatial index structure. So that implies basically that if data points are in a particular space, in a particular in a particular dimension, then those suppose a data set has those spatial index structures, so that there we can find this approach very advantageous. Disadvantages might include input parameters may be difficult to determine, right? You can't exactly identify because yeah, we use these approaches like grid search and other algorithms to find out what might be the optimal parameters. But yeah, input parameters may be difficult to determine. Also, in some situations, it is very sensitive to input parameter setting. So that is about DB scan. Now if you are okay with the understanding of DB scan, we can move to the coding part of DB scan. So here we are taking this data set make moons from sklearn.datasets, and then we are importing DB scan. So then we are applying DB scan with epsilon, that is the radius as 0.05 and minimum number of samples which should be there in that radius are 5, right? Then we fit that data set on DB scan. We can see the labels, right? Uh, so these are the components. Then then we can plot the DB scan and we can see that it has identified these clusters, right? So as you will go deep into these parameters and fitting how experimenting with these parameters make our clustering better, you will get to know more about it. Right. So here we can see that for epsilon equals 0.05 and minimum number of samples 5, you get these many clusters, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different clusters, which is not desirable. We can see that we just need two clusters here. So for that we have put these parameters as epsilon 0.2 and minimum number of samples as 5. So yeah, that plays a major role there, as you can see. So yeah. So that's all for clustering. If you guys have any doubt, we can discuss. Even in previous, so if you have in this class, if you have any doubt, so we can discuss or anything. Yeah. Hello. Hello. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you guys have any doubt in unsupervised learning clustering part, so we can discuss that. Okay. Thanks, Ashwini. Uh, or else, what we can do is in the previous classes also we have done so many concepts. So if you have any doubts regarding those, you can discuss that. You might have used some data set, done something, uh, done some analysis, right? So we can discuss that if you want.
Sir, I
Yeah.
didn't get the lecture of the last class.
Yeah, which particular part you didn't get?
Last lecture, sir.
So you
All
want
the
me to,
section of the last lecture.
which section? Complete
Last
session.
and yes,
So you
last
didn't,
last.
yeah, you didn't get the complete session.
Yes, sir.
So you mean you want me to repeat the whole session? I
So
mean,
because I
that's,
was absent in the last class, that's why sir, I'm
yeah,
asking.
I understand that, but I mean that's not possible, no, to repeat the whole session because it was a 2 hour session, right? So in the next
I'm
whatever
asking
time.
that, sir. I didn't get the sir recorded. Sir,
Oh,
sorry, sir.
you didn't get the
Hello.
recording? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, I'm asking that. I'm not sir getting say you will repeat the whole class.
Okay, okay,
I'm
I
asking
got it.
that sir. I
So
didn't get the.
you can get that
Okay.
from the folder I shared, right?
No, sir.
Yes, sir. So and the folder is showing that I
Folder
have
is
sent
showing
you a
that.
mail and then you will confirm it. Then I will get the session. But sir, you
Okay,
didn't confirm
I
it. I
think few
think.
people are not there in the that Google Classroom then. Are you there in the Google Classroom?
So I'm in the Google Classroom, sir.
That should not be the
Yes, sir.
case.
Even I'm also facing same issue.
You should have mentioned that in the group itself then. Why didn't you mention in the WhatsApp group? I mean, that group is for such discussions only. If you have any doubt, if you have any problem in accessing some particular thing, then you should have asked that. Okay, I'll again send that. There is no issue. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah. Any other thing?
Sir,
Yeah.
I'm from non-CS background.
Yeah.
Is it sufficient for your class lecture for project?
I didn't get you. So you mean to say that for project, are my classes sufficient, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, without, see, we have seen that, right? That coding does not mean much here. I mean, Yeah, it means that you need to have an idea of what particular model or what particular, see, as I told in early classes as well, that apart from dealing with data set and making some pre-processing there is not much coding in data science, right? So all of the coding required is in cleaning and creating those features, doing some feature engineering, all of that. Apart from that, as we can see that there are these effective libraries like sklearn which help you out with yeah, so that is not a problem. And even if you are not from CS background, if you are getting intuitively like what what these things mean, what we mean by supervised learning, what we mean by machine learning, what we mean by classification, what we mean by regression, and how what is training, what is testing, what is overfitting, what is underfitting, uh, how do we get to know about error, how do we evaluate models, then I think you are good to go with any sort of project, right? So that is not a problem there. But I will,
Yes.
yeah, for the projects it's fine, but I'll say that if you are looking forward to go in this particular industry, then because there are yeah, from every domain we see people coming here, right, in the data science industry. So there is a lot of coding. I mean, there are people from nice coding background, and so yeah, so the competition is there, but one can get with bit of coding, not much is required. Yeah, with in future you might need to go into much details of coding and learn, like as a CS computer science background guy is. But as of now, for projects perspective, I think it's fine. Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
very good.
These are also data science classes ended, sir, from today.
From today, no, I mean we have more classes as well. So,
So
so
we have to study more.
I didn't get you. We have to study more, yeah, because there are like
I want to ask.
six classes, right? Six classes.
Yes, sir.
They have. Okay. So in that, yeah. So once those six classes are complete. So you wanted to ask something else, I think. What is it you wanted to say? I think I misunderstood. Hello. So we have reached till here now. Unsupervised clustering algorithms. After this, we will be dealing with decision tree and random forest, and then introduction to NLP. Then we will assign projects and do project related work in the last class. Right?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah. So if you guys have any doubt, we can discuss. Otherwise, yeah. If you have any doubt regarding what we have studied till now, because we have studied quite a lot. From introduction to data science, then Python, then different data types and conditional statements, functions, exception handling, these NumPy, these libraries, data science libraries, then basic statistics, variables and data visualizations, machine learning, classification regression, unsupervised learning, clustering algorithms. So if you want to discuss anything regarding these topics we have understood, we can go further because we have quite a lot of time. If not, then I think I would have to wrap up, right? So as I have told that you should do a bit of self-study and uh, look into more data sets and look into various approaches, how the approaches we learn are being modified, how if we get some uh, if we get some error, high error, if we get some underfitting, if we get some overfitting, how do we deal with that? That you I can tell you, but that you will get an intuition only once you deal with real data sets and do work with them. You can get all those data sets online and do some work on them, and then you will get insights of those things. So yeah, that's from my side. I think we are good to wrap up if you don't have any further doubts.